Just days after a declaration that Boko Haram was on the verge of being defeated, the city of Yola in Nigeria was struck by a terrorist attack, a series of bombings that's left dozens dead. Initial reports suggested that at least 32 people were killed and 80 injured, according to Reuters. An account from a Red Cross official says the explosion happened in the midst of a large crowd because the area houses a livestock market, an open-air eatery, and a mosque. This is a city, by the way, of about 3 to 3.5 100,000 people, so it's not inconsequential sized city. And so this is obviously a bad sign, considering that they have apparently been making good ground against Boko Haram. This is a years-old conflict between Nigeria and the surrounding countries against the terrorist group, which, as we were talking about beforehand, has formally pledged allegiance with ISIS, but was a group that existed before ISIS. They didn't need any encouragement to resort to atrocities, as last year's hashtag Bring Back Our Girls should remind us. Right. And to give you an idea of some of the recent acts of terrorism, in October, 27 people were killed and 96 injured in a blast at a mosque in Jambutu, while in September, 7 people died and 20 were injured by a bomb left at the camp visited by President Buhari just last week. 2 suicide bombers blew themselves up at one of Yola's main markets in June, killing 31. So it's sort of a repeating of that same sort of attack. And so Boko Haram continues. Some would say it's death throes. Some would say that it is still just as strong as it was. Yeah. Not a good situation in Nigeria.
No, I mean, it strikes me again is that, without wishing to sound too inflammatory and coming across as being insensitive to what we've just witnessed in Paris, but these types of atrocities, you're calling out those numbers there, John, 17,000 deaths. It's not something that we report on a great deal in this country.
No, it's not.
Or anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you just kind of, that dichotomy, that paradox there brings it home. Not to say that, you know, any particular death is worse or better. I'm not trying to ascribe some kind of meritocracy to it. But the depths of this and you know, the fact that they are part of, as you said, they have those similar tendencies, that similar mindset to ISIS, that... But it just doesn't really appear on the radar for us in the West. You know, that is, again, is sort of profoundly troubling, and also it just indicates to me that the depth of the ideology and the fact that, as we go back to it, you eradicate. Okay, so you eradicate ISIS. There'll be another one. Mm-hmm. There'll be something else. It's not that simple. Yeah. You know, as you know, you don't. You know, you're talking about in the piece, the quote you just read, 2 suicide bombers killing 31 people. Yeah. You don't stop people blowing themselves up by blowing up their family, or by it has to be, dare I say it, it's a longer term. It needs to be a longer term integrated socioeconomic strategy than blowing them up, because there'll be another bunch. I mean, it'll be another.
And one of the bombers was an 11-year-old girl.
Oh my God.
Suicide bomber. So, look, it's an absolutely devastating conflict. To give you some numbers, Boko Haram was named in the latest Global Terrorism Index as the most deadly terrorist group in the world on Tuesday, having killed over 6,600 people just last year. That's about, I believe, 500 or 600 more than ISIS had at that point. And they have killed, as you said, 17,000 people. There have been they actually have a lot of similarities with ISIS in terms of the massacres, the sexual slavery, kidnapping girls and forcing them to marry their fighters. So there is an ideological similarity there. And some of the neighboring countries, thankfully, are helping out, especially as Boko Haram, as Nigeria's military campaign against them continues. Boko Haram is being pushed more to the borders with countries like Chad and I believe Cameroon. And so they obviously are worried about Boko Haram moving into their area. There have been terrorist attacks in the surrounding countries. And we can't forget that Africa has its own, sometimes related to ISIS groups, sometimes unique groups. We talked a couple of years ago about the absolutely terrible terrorist attack at I believe it was a mall in Kenya. It was a number of shooters just moving through a mall and gunning people down. And it makes all the sense in the world that we focus on terrorist attacks in Paris, but we can't pretend that places like Beirut or Africa also have ongoing struggles with terrorist groups.